Hi, today I am going to use simple deco mesh in the red and make our beautiful sign here, the hero in creating a wreath. It's Nicole from mychristmas.com.au. Hope you enjoy. Okay, so we have some of the wreath frames. If you don't have a frame with the tinsel ties on it, it's not a problem. You can simply use cable ties to attach your mesh to your frame. And what we're going to do is we're going to have a red base, then we're going to use a couple of ribbons, including tartan. I think I'll use the narrower tartan, but you could use wider if you wanted to. And then the sign is going to go in the middle of the wreath here. So let me show you how you create the mesh on the frame. I am in the warehouse, by the way, so there are noises, there's people all around us. So forgive the background noise that you're going to hear. Okay, so with the mesh, obviously it's rolled up, so I always make sure I work it, because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to scrunch my mesh in and make sort of woofs of it here, and therefore it makes sense to work with the natural curve of the mesh rather than working the opposite way. I like to work on the outside ring first, and then I'll work on the inside ring. So to attach, I usually just pinch the mesh like this and then attach it to my cable tie, my tinsel tie here, or as I said, if you had a cable, that'd be the other option. And then when you put it on, you just want to attach it really tight and just twist it twice. With the tail here, just to get it out of the way, I've got a little bit of bind wire here. Right, so I've just attached that on there and then attached my first bit of mesh to there. And then I work on roughly 30 centimeter pieces or lengths that I'm feeding into each of the ties. So as I said, roughly, you don't need to measure. Sometimes I would use a pipe cleaner, or if you wanted to have a piece of paper down that's 30 centimeters, you can do that, 12 inches. And then just scrunch up your mesh. If you make the mesh, if you want to make it sort of tighter so the mesh doesn't stand out so much, you can make each bunch a bit shorter. So that versus sort of that. So you can work out how full you want it to look. So you scrunch it up in your hands first, keep it nice and tight. I like to pull it at this stage to make sure it's very easy to end up with very big lumps of mesh there. So you sort of want to try and avoid that. So it's just slightly less than 30 centimeters, probably about 25 centimeters is what I'm working at, which is 10 inches. And then once you've done that, bring it around to the first cable tie we have here and keep it pinched in there. And then I like to just do a double twist of the cable tie, and then your mesh is in. You can fluff it all up at the end. And all we're going to do is continue that process, and we'll work all the way around the bottom first, and then I'll show you how to move it across to the top. We've got a lot of ribbon going on this over the top, so that's why it doesn't matter. If you don't want it to be too full, you don't have to have this sort of sticking right out. If you were doing this with cable ties instead, you would do exactly what I've done here. So if you have just a frame with no mounts there, so scrunch it, get your piece, and then I would normally then tie it loosely, so I don't over tie it until I make sure I'm happy with everything, because it's very hard with the cable ties to take them off. You would loosely cable tie on. So look at, I've got 2 loops of attachment to my frame at the base here, so I'd make sure I had two cable mounts in each section of the frame, and then the top of the frame has just one. So I would follow that through with cable ties. 2 ties to each bottom one tie to the top. You can of course use a coloured mesh as well. I just thought with the lovely sign being the hero of this and the ribbons that I've chosen, I didn't need there to be extra sort of colour from the, a pattern on the mesh, so that's why I've gone with a plain one. But you could red and green, plain green, natural, gold, they would all work really well with this colour theme. The sign that I'm using is the, I think it's called 12-inch or 30 centimeter size sign. There is a smaller sign that comes in the same pattern as this as well, but it is the larger one that I'm using on this wreath. So now I'm coming back into the beginning of my frame here. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. And what I like to do is untie so that it doesn't get too full. I actually will untie that tinsel tie, oops, and then tie both pieces of mesh around it and get that nice and tight there. So now we've got the full outer ring done. Then what we need to do is take our mesh into the inside to work the inside of the ring. So same idea is just to, from where it is, go to the closest cable tie and twist that in and then work our way around the rest. Having a look at this, I can actually see that there are some, looks like there's 8, so there's only 6 sections, there's 8 ties. So if you're using those cable mounts, they're obviously occasionally they're working it so that they've got 2 of these cable ties into one section just to make sure it's full enough. All right, so now I'm back to the beginning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to again untie my cable tie here to keep it as flat as I can. Once you've tied the mesh in place, it does tend to stay in place. One thing with mesh is make sure you don't flatten this in the off season because you won't get the shape back. So it really does need room to be stored so that it stays nice and shaped, and wherever you have tied it, then it sits there quite nicely while you tie the next one in. Before I cut it off, I just want to check. In fact, that one's just a bit big. I'm going to bring that back a bit in size. And now I'm going to cut off my mesh with enough of a tail that I can pull it through my frame and tie it into place. I've used probably about 2/3 of a roll of mesh. So if I do want to fill it out a bit, I could go back in there and add a bit more to it. I think once we've got our ribbons in there though, it will be fine. So let's just get this with the end here. I'm going to tuck it underneath the frame. You can see that's coming through now. Here, and then use my bind wire to simply attach it to the frame in here. Creating a wreath frame out of mesh is really easy. You could put it on a green, like as in a green foliage wreath as well, and just use the mesh as extra sort of color. I tend to think you don't really need to bother because you're going to be adding lots to it, so it will be busy enough once you're done. All right, so there we've got our base done, and again, just so you can see it now, that is going to go into the middle there. And in fact, I'm going to attach that, I think now, because I want to see, or just make sure I know where it goes to work out how much ribbon I need to put on. Okay, so what we're going to use is we're going to use our gold glitter ribbon, our green glitter ribbon, and our tartan. And what we're going to do is cut these pieces to the same length. So I'm going to try and cut these to 25 centimeters, and I'm going to use a ruler because I do want them to be the same. I've seen it done where you can also get a piece of acrylic or a piece of cardboard and wrap the ribbon around it and then cut the ends. That makes it even quicker. But I don't want to go too far until I've actually checked that it's a good length for my frame and the sort of how buffy I've made the mesh. So if you make your mesh very full, then you'll probably need your ribbon to be a little bit longer. If your mesh is a bit tighter, then your ribbon might want to be a bit shorter. So let's try first the 25 and see how it works. Once you've got one, you can obviously layer them too. You don't need to keep the tape measure out. So what I'm doing here is just cutting the ends of the ribbon by snapping up. You get that nice fishtail. So I like to test one first, and once you've done one, you can prep all your ribbon ready to attach it to your frame. Because I'm using one wider ribbon and two narrower, I'm therefore going to always layer the bigger, wider one at the bottom, but I'm going to, as I put it onto my frame, I'm going to swap over the gold or the green that goes at the top. And I do like to, when I position them, sort of position them on a little bit of an angle like that. Simply pinch the middle, this, and I'm going to attach this to every one of my frame ties here. Again, making it as tight as I can you can kind of spray this out. Yeah, I'm happy with that amount. Right, I don't want the ribbon to be spraying past the mesh. So I'm going to cut all my ribbons now to the 25 centimeter mark, do the fishtails, and I'll be ready to show you how we tie them all on. We need to cut as much ribbon as we've got ties. So there's 12 ties around the outside, 8 ties in the middle. So we need 20 pieces of each ribbon. Okay, so we have all of our ribbon cut. That's probably the most boring and the longest part of this whole process. It probably took us about 30 minutes or so. If you help cut a couple for me. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to simply work around each of these cable, the ties here. And as I go, I'm going to alternate whether I have a gold ribbon or a green ribbon on top. As I put it together, I'm going to just sort of give it a bit of a cross here, pinch it, and then tie it into my frame. And again, just always trying to make that as tight as I possibly can. Okay, so just so you can see how we're progressing here and how the ribbon is filling it out. I haven't played too much with it, just tied it on there. So I'm working my way, I've done the front middle row, now I'm working my way through all of the back row here, and then I will spray out the ribbon to get it as full as I can, and then we'll put our sign on. In fact, I'll fluff out the ribbon after the sign's on so it doesn't get flattened again. Okay, well, I miscounted how many of these I needed because there are actually less the ties on the back. I had noticed on the outer ring there was some of these sections only had one as well, so I actually only needed 17. The majority, all the ribbon on, so let's get our signs in place and then we can finesse the end. The main thing when I'm attaching this sign is that I'm going to want to sweep all of my fabric, particularly the nice ribbons, out so we don't lose it underneath the sign, because the sign's a bit bigger than the middle of the wreath. And to make it easy to attach the sign, there are ties on here. I just find it a lot easier to use the cable mounts. So I'm going to put one on top and bottom and then use bind wire and that to attach it. These are self-adhesive. They are from Bunnings, Home Depot, you know, sort of your hardware stores or electrical supplies. And then the florist wire, your bind wire, pipe cleaner, whatever you're using, can slide underneath there to attach to your frame. And again, I like to try and do my attachment. You've got these crossbars under here. What did I say? There. Oh, actually, we won't do a join one. So let's say our crossbar here. I'm going to use that to attach the sign so I can actually tie it in the cross here. All right, so it just means it's more secure and it's not going to move. And what I'm doing now is I'm just trying to make sure that my sign is centered and pulled in nicely to the rope, which it is. Get that the ribbon's all flat, we haven't played with that. Okay, so now let's get all these ribbons, nice ribbons out and work our way around and give them a nice little bit of shape. You're going to have to do this just as you hang it up, I would say, just to give those tails, make sure they look as, you know, look nice when it's in its position. And there you have it. A beautiful 12 Days of Christmas sign centerpiece of our very simple wreath with our deco mesh frame and ribbons on there, and that's it. Cut the ribbons, tie it on after you've put the deco mesh frame in. That's it. These are all on the website mychristmas.com.au. If you need any help with, we've used 38mm ribbons by 2 and 1 of the 64 wide, a roll of each. We haven't used a full roll, we've probably used about half of each, so you may even get, no, you wouldn't get a second one out. You'd need a 4th ribbon to make 2 of these. But and then the 30cm or 12-inch sign in the middle. Thanks for joining me. Have a sensational day. See you.